All right, welcome back to the channel. So, Shawn Porter and Terence Crawford is a fight that many boxing fans want to see, and Bob Arum let you know what it would take for those guys to make the fight, or more, actually better put, he asked the question, who's going to pay for it? Man, Bob Arum, top-ranked Terence Crawford, just full of it. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel, subscribers, and thank you guys so much, everybody that subscribes to the channel. Thank you to everybody as a member, supports in the live streams and the super chats and the Cash App, and everybody that supports on Patreon. Thank you guys so much for your support. Bob Arum talks about Terence Crawford versus Shawn Porter. Now, Terence Crawford is a WBO welterweight champion of the world, and in my opinion, is the #1 pound for pound fighter in the world. That's my take on it. The reason why I say that is I think that he has the best combination of the four scoring criteria of boxing, better combination of those things than anybody else, between clean, effective punching, effective aggressiveness, ring generalship, and defense. Terence Crawford has all of those in spades, and he's proved it in multiple weight classes. So in my opinion, he's the #1 pound for pound fighter in the world. But there's a problem with that. And although I believe that, there's many other people that do not believe that and give that to other people because of one major issue that Terence Crawford has, and that is the level of his competition. Now, there is an option or a opportunity at the welterweight division for him to solve those problems. Right now, I can understand him having an issue getting, fighting really top quality fighters at 135 pounds. When he was there really weren't any. Adrian Bronner had moved out of the division, and really it was because of, a lucky happenstance with Breidis Prescott that Terence Crawford really got his name out there and got in contention for a lightweight fight, a championship fight, because he had fought as a replacement fighter for some guy that pulled out against Breidis Prescott at 140 pounds. But then after he beats Breidis Prescott convincingly, he moves down to 140, and people started talking about him as the best lightweight. But he really was a 140 pounder, at the time, coming in at 147, 148. He moves up to 140. There's not a lot of fighters there. The people that were there at the time, one guy that was there before him, Danny Garcia, left. So he fought his Postals. He fought his Derry-Jeans, his Postals, his, those type of guys. So those were the best guys, best guys that were there at the time. John Molina wasn't one of the better guys that were there, but, you get my point. But once he came to 147 pounds, he didn't face those obstacles anymore. He was not like he was at 135, which is an unknown commodity. And he's not fighting at 140 in a situation where there aren't a lot of really good fighters. I mean, you can't name 5 really top-notch 140 pounders that were in boxing at the time he was there, especially since Danny Garcia had moved up. But at 147 pounds, you would think that there's plenty of people to choose from. Unfortunately, he signed with Top Rank, and Top Rank likes inside fights. Now, Bob Arum is saying something about a potential fight with Shawn Porter. Now, when he says about this potential fight with Shawn Porter, ask the question, yeah, even if they wanted to fight, this is just so ridiculous. Even if they wanted to. Now, that part of it, do they want to? We don't know, which is so ridiculous. Terence Crawford does not have anybody over there at Top Rank to fight, and Shawn Porter does not have a championship belt. These are two of the best welterweights that are there. Neither one of these guys have somebody to fight. It's a perfect, just common sense type of fight. So the fact that maybe they do or don't want it is it's crazy on his face. But if you even get past the fact, and they both agree that they want to fight, then he says, who's going to pay for it? Boxing fans are going to pay for it. That's who's going to pay for it. The same people that pay for everything in boxing. boxing fans. The question is, how much money are they going to get paid, and how much money, Bob Arum, are you going to get paid? Because last time I checked, not even on pay-per-view. These fights that I'm going to name were not on pay-per-view. Shawn Porter has already fought Danny Garcia, and he's already fought Keith Thurman. Both Danny Garcia and Keith Thurman make as much money as Terence Crawford makes in fights. So why would it be that Terence Crawford and Shawn Porter is too expensive, while Shawn Porter versus Danny Garcia is not too expensive, or Shawn Porter versus Keith Thurman is not too expensive, when they all make roughly the same amount of money? The problem is Bob Arum, and the fact that Bob Arum has to take a big chunk of the money out of that equation. But in the case of Shawn Porter fighting Keith Thurman, nobody's there taking from what I understand, nobody's in there taking the chunk out of their hide that Bob Arum is taking out of Terence Crawford. So Bob Arum is the problem with why those guys can't fight, which is why Bob Arum is constantly making in-house fights. Because when you have an inside fight, he's getting paid off the entire event and not having to deal with or negotiate anything with a different team. So just the idea that Bob Arum would ask that to me is just like, man, come on. Terence Crawford, I'm doing this video on Terence Crawford. So for the Patreons, it's not going to be patrons. It's not going to be something that is going to be out on YouTube. But on the Patreon page, what I'm doing is I'm not going to say what it is. I'm doing a project, and this project made it necessary for me to watch every one of Terence Crawford's fights that I could actually watch. And let me assure you, man, looking at the cards, looking at Top Rank cards, watching those fights, Terence Crawford has been in a lot of mismatches. These are hot. Most of these fights are not even remotely competitive, and none of these guys that he's fighting are top level guys. These are all just in-house fights, low to medium high level fighters that are not making a lot of money. And as a result, Terence Crawford is looking very, very good. Bob Arum is making whatever money he's making off of that thing, but it leaves so many questions out there about what type of fighter Terence Crawford really is if he gets in there with somebody where you think he has a chance to win. And when I'm watching these fights, literally the most competitive fight that I've watched so far, and this is going to sound crazy, the most competitive fight that I saw during the actual fight. Now it wound up in a knockout, but the most competitive fight I've seen against Terence Crawford has been Hank Lundy. I know that's going to sound crazy, but I promise you, go back and watch those fights. Hank Lundy was the only fighter that I saw Terence Crawford fight that had remotely the same level of boxing ability that Terence Crawford did. The rest of those guys were flat-footed, jab, straight right hand, chin in the air type of fighters. With the exception of, and I'm talking about at 140 pounds. So you have Yuriokas Gamboa, but Yuriokas Gamboa was too small. Hank Lundy was too small. Hank Lundy was in there looking like he was 130, looking like he was a blown up 126 pounder. But he was the only guy that I knew that I saw that caused Terence Crawford problems. Was shifting on Terence Crawford, slipping his punches, countering Terence Crawford, making Terence Crawford have to work and make Terence Crawford have to think. I promise you this. If Terence Crawford and Hank Lundy were the same size, if they were the same size fighter, and I might add, Hank Lundy didn't hold his hand in that, with his left hand way down, by his knee. If those guys weren't the same, if those guys were closer to the same size, and that glaring deficiency wasn't present, dude, I don't know who's gonna win that fight, man. I mean, they look like, with the exception of the tremendous size difference between the two, the skill level didn't look too much off, man. Now, Terence Crawford looked better, but not a lot better. So that just makes me wonder, what is he going to do if he gets in there with a guy that can fight, that is as quick as Hank Lundy? Because the thing with Hank Lundy was very quick. His hands were as fast and his slips were as fast. He understood what it is Terence Crawford was trying to do, what Terence Crawford was trying to set up. It's just that Hank Lundy is just Hank Lundy. And Hank Lundy is not that big. He doesn't hit that hard. Like I said, Hank Lundy standing next to Terence Crawford looked like one guy was at 140, looked like Terence Crawford was weighing 150 pounds. And I do believe he walked into the ring in that fight around 154, 155 against Hank Lundy, who was like 3 inches shorter. Arm reach was 3 inches shorter. Looked like he was outweighed by 20 pounds, and that's what turned that fight that way. And that is why people that do not put Terence Crawford at the pound for pound number one position actually have an argument, because he's not had to fight guys like Shawn Porter. Dude, if I'm looking at how Shawn Porter fights, I'm looking at how Hank Lundy fights, look how Terence Crawford fights. I promise you, Terence Crawford ain't just going to be able to just tee off, wing off, and hit Shawn Porter with a looping right hand or a looping left hand, and knock him out in the middle of those exchanges, because he might get hit by Shawn Porter, and Shawn Porter's an excellent boxer. But then again, maybe he can. But in order to know that, we got to actually see the fight, man. It's not that I'm trying to hate on Terence Crawford. It's just, dude, he needs to fight somebody, man. Fight Shawn Porter. Fight somebody where we can see what it's like. Because really, looking at the fights that Terence Crawford has, man, these guys are not on that guy's skill level. But the one guy, and if there wasn't for the Hank Lundy fight and maybe a little bit at the beginning of the Victor Postol fight, but primarily the Hank Lundy fight, and maybe in some moments in the Gamboa fight, maybe I would be like, nah, nobody can touch his skill set. But from what I saw right there are some guys at 147 pounds, man, that have that same ability that Hank Lundy has, the same ability to slip punches, the same thinking just as quickly as Terence Crawford, that might be able to test him. But then again, Terence Crawford might, like he does with everybody else, really take off in the last, in the championship rounds, put the foot on the gas and be able to get him out of there. But, I want to be able to see that, to say that that's the case. And so far, man, man, come on, man, pay the dude the money. Anyway, it is what it is. You let me know what you think in the comment section. This thing is so frustrating to me. And with that, I'm out. Peace.